do you think? Do you think it changed like the rest of the world at all? Like the rest of America that you noticed?
No, I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you have any kids of your own?
I have had 7. We've got 4 left.
Oh, yeah.
It's just,
How old are they?
don't ask that question. The youngest daughter is must be probably 38 or 9.
Okay. So do you have grandkids then?
I got 5, and I got a great grandson.
Oh wow.
Wow.
Oh, that's great.
Do you get to see them often, or is it just holidays? and
What's
such?
that?
Do you get to see your grandchildren often? No.
No. They're all in the area, but they're all working.
Yeah.
Busy.
Yeah.
By in the area, do you mean they live like right? Oh, really?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
they're
okay.
all right around here.
Oh, nice.
They just never left the area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never needed to.
Found jobs and
Yeah.
stayed put.
Cool.
That's cool.
That's
That's
great.
very good. Yeah.
So, obviously, computers and cell phones are everywhere now. And I was wondering, over the past 20 years, do you think that technology like cell phones and cars and computers have changed the way people live now in your area, in your neighborhood?
They,
Yeah.
everybody owns a computer but us.
Do you think, like, overall, do you think that technology changed things for the better or the worse?
Worse.
Yeah. See, like the way of doing things before the computers and cell phones came into.
Yeah, I'd go in and argue with the other guy, but the computer I can't. I was a treasurer at the church, and I could send the bills off, gas bills, and every month, and I had the parsonage in the church, and I sent it off the gas company, and finally one day I got a notice that the bill wasn't paid, and I knew it was, and I said something to the board, and they said, well, wait another month, and they sent another one. So I come in with Greeley and went to the gas company, and it's due and it's due and everything. And I said, well, it's in the computer. I said, let's get it out. I says, and I said, I want to talk to somebody ahead of the gas company. Well, Mr. So-and-so, he's busy. And I says, well, I'll be right here. Mr. So-and-so ain't busy. Finally, I went back to his office, and he says, well, what's the deal? And I said, yeah, I'll hand him the papers. And he says, yeah, it's due. And I says, well, I paid that. I says, I know it's been paid. And in the meantime, I says, I've got a check here in my pocket from the gas company for $60-some refund. And I says, where's that come in? Oh, there's something wrong. I says, yeah. And so that's the way it went.
So it was all the computer's fault.
Well, it was the guy that put it in the computer.
Well, I think the thing that frustrates him the most is the car.
Oh, yeah?
Because he could always work on the cars otherwise up to this point, but they're computerized.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, do you feel like aspects of your culture and your way of living are being forgotten about or overlooked because of new technologies like this, like the new computerized cars and stuff like that? Do you think people are kind of starting to maybe forget about the older ways of living that you're used to?
Well, they haven't forgot about it. They just, yeah.
No.
It's just where's the people going to keep on living the way they are?
Yeah. Right.
It's just no way.
Mhm. Yeah, I see that. You try and how do you try and pass your culture on to your children and grandchildren?
Loan them money.
That's the best way to do
it. So they can keep up with it.
How do you feel about the growth of Greeley, like the shopping malls and the roads and all the business centers? How it's changed? Do
Well,
you?
they've just ruined a lot of
Yeah.
businesses where the businesses had labor and had help and stuff, and
Mhm.
well, you can go through the town and see the doors closed, and that's
Yeah.
about it.
And all the land that they've built on. Does that bother you, knowing that what used to be there, like farms and stuff, but now there's a mall?
It's like our farm out there. Why, made a living, and now it's all in houses and ain't nothing.
Yeah.
So it's
It's a negative thing.
a sad
Yeah.
situation.
Do you think kids have it too easy these days?
Yes.
Well, especially coming from someone who started working when they were 6 years old.
Yeah.
Well, that was when we was thinning beets. Years and years ago. Well, us kids and my folks blocked the beets. They went along and chopped some of them out, and then us kids had to come along and
Mm-hmm.
pull all of them out except one beet. And we was working, well, it was my uncle's field, and nobody would work it. They had alfalfa growed up in them, and alfalfa was hard to chop out, and nobody would thin them. Well, we thinned beets all over, and so we was thinning there. And car come along the road and stopped, and guy come walking across the field and stopped my parents and was talking to my dad. And when those kids got down there thinning, why, we was listening, and this guy was from the, I don't know, some bureau stopped the kids from working.
Oh,
And
child labor.
and he said to my dad, he says, well, you gotta keep those kids out of the field.
And how old were you when that happened?
I was probably about 12 then. Anyway, my dad says, well, he says, you've got a pretty good car out there. And the guy said, yeah. Well, he says, you go in and get enough groceries to feed those kids. And he says, I'll gladly take them out of the field. He said, just bring it out. But he says, until you bring food out to keep us, he says, we're going to have to work.
Yeah.
And the old guy took off. Last we seen him. Yeah.
Did you enjoy working out in the field with all your siblings? Was it a fun thing to do?
Yeah.
Besides the work, but.
Yeah.
Well, I think, does anyone else have anything?
When did you get your first vehicle, your first car, and what kind of car was it?
It was a 36 Plymouth, and it was after I got out of the service.
Okay.
let's see, what? Well, I owed $600 on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was farming, and I was supposed to pay him in December,
Mm-hmm.
and I no more got home, and here was a slip in the mail. They sold the car to so-and-so and wanted me to sign papers and this and that, and I didn't have time to sign papers. So it went in the trash. And about 2 months later or something, I got to say another one, and I just never answered them. And it was December. I went to, our crops failed, and I was working at the ranch.
Mm-hmm.
It's Old Clue Ranch, Selden Ranch, and got paid and saved up enough money. Walked in the day that was due, and had a check from Loss for, I think it was $1,100. And I owed $6, and the guy, well, the clerk at the finance office, oh, this and this, and we can't do this and that. And pretty soon, old Francis, the man that owned the business, come out and, oh, we can't cash that check and everything. And I said, well, what about well, you get it cashed, he says, but he says, there won't be no more interest from this day on. Well, and why didn't you take care of those papers? I says, I signed papers that I'd pay you, and I says, I'm here to pay you. And sort of that day, so it was $1,100. It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I went into one bank, no, they wouldn't cash it. I went in the other bank, and they wouldn't. And I says, well, call Bill Farler.
Mm-hmm.
And I says, I'm feeding his cattle on the ranch. I says, you call him. So they pretended they called, I don't know. And so they wouldn't cash it, didn't cash the check, but took it back, and oh, we can't do that, we can't do this and that. I went back to this bank, and I says, Bill Farr says to cash his check. And the old banker got a hold of the phone, and he called, and old Bill Farr told him to cash the check. Before that, it was my brother and we had our old work coveralls on, and we come walking in the bank, and the old president of the bank, boy, he come out and he was shaking hands with us. So he cashed the check, and we went back to finance outfit, and old Francis says, well, I paid him. And he says, well, I just didn't have that kind of money. I said, well, there's a finance company across the street. Come see him. But that's how hard they were, you know.
Yeah.
What did you make during the war? What did you get for
$47.
$47? Yeah, and that just went home, or did they pay you out?
No, they paid, and then I had to send them home.
Right.
And I'd spend about, I got the little old book at home where all I spent $8 or $10 a month, and the rest went home. Oh, I'd loan it out to the guys. I made more money there than I did in the Army. Yeah.
So they were paying you $47 a month? Yeah.
And I've worked many a days for 50 cents a day.
Wow.
Jeez. Kids nowadays definitely have it too easy.
That's the reason I can't, they go down and, even in a restaurant, and $10 or $12 for a plate.
Yeah.
And my dollar was,
Jeez, it's like 20 hours of work.
yeah.
Any other questions?
I think that's about all we
Okay.
have.
Well, we got another 12 minutes or so. So how did you get medical training in the Army? How did you get
I
selected
never-
to go do that?
I never did get basic training.
Oh, you didn't?
I went into the Army, and it was in November, and right at the holidays, and they sent the sergeants home that was for training. They got off to go home,
Mhm.
and I laid around in camp for about a week. And they called us out, and there's so many of you going to medical training. They didn't say medical training. And I was one of the first ones that called, and they sent me to William Beaumont General Hospital for 6 weeks of medical training.
So nobody asked you if you wanted to be a medic? Nobody
No.
said, or, you know,
Well,
anybody who's...
I found out later all of them in the 37th draft was pretty near all medics.
Yeah?
They was needing medics so bad that all that draft, they just,
All you guys are medics?
yeah. And I went into the school. Well, shoot, I was never wrote my name for probably 8 years. Hardly.
Yeah.
Sat in that inside of a building and sat down to medical terms, and and I said to the old first sergeant, I said, "What do they do when you flunk out of this place?" Oh, he says, "They'll find a place for you." So there was 300 of us went to the nursing school, and there was 3 of us that never graduated from high school or never ever went to high school. There was a kid from Kansas, and the other kid, I think, was Kentucky. Anyhow, when we graduated, this kid and I was walking across the field, and met the sergeant, and he says, "Have you guys seen the roster?" He says, "They've got you out, the roster out." And of course, we went over there and looked for the last names on there. But we was the first in the first 15.
Really?
Of the 300.
Wow. That's impressive.
And so they said, well, they got starting some new outfits, and he says some of you will be lucky. And I was one of the lucky ones. And well, I went in, I got out of school, and in about, it wasn't about 10 days, I was overseas.
What kind of school was it? What did they offer you?
It was William Beaumont General Hospital. It was for nursing. I've come as a male nurse.
Yeah. And that was for how long? How long did that course that you
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Now you're in the Army, and 6 weeks later you're a medic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Were you involved in any of the other wars, like Vietnam or Korea, or
No,
just World War II?
That's what.
Yeah.
And you brought back German prisoners one time. on the
Well,
ship?
yeah, we brought a
Shipload?
shipload of German prisoners after D-Day.
Yeah.
I was in the Pacific before, and they figured they'd need more medics. And over on the Atlantic after at D-Day, and they pulled us out of there and sent us to the Pacific,
Mhm.
or to the Atlantic for D-Day, and they didn't need as many medics as they figured, and
Yeah.
they had a shipload of German prisoners bring back. These are all patients, and
These were injured German prisoners?
yeah,
Okay.
and was coming in New York, come over the radio that the portholes would have to be closed that night, and those, well, most of the, not most of them, but the German prisoners was 14, 15, 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
Boy, they just went up in the air because they was told that New York was bombed and everything else.
Uh-huh.
And then they said that didn't have to close the portholes, and boy, that was something.
Yeah.
And we got in close to New York, and you could see the lights.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And
And they were surprised by that.
the older people, any of them could, held the others up to the portals so they could see the lights, and they just couldn't believe that.
Well, so let me get this right. The Germans, the German propaganda was that they'd already bombed New York.
Bombed New York. And
Out of business. They'd
Yeah.
eliminated New York.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so all these kids thought that the war was already taking place.
That they,
In the
they
US.
was winning.
We were winning.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Mhm.
Huh.
Yeah, it was
And these were 14, 15, 16-year-old
kids, yeah.
who'd been captured, or these were all wounded.
Yeah, well, they was captured, soldiers out, and they got wounded.
Mm-hmm.
But the older people, they understood what was going on more.
Mhm.
And you could talk to those Germans and tell them where they lived. Shoot, they could tell you more about their place than you knew.
Really?
The school that good
Hmm.
on what was going on in this country.
Yeah.
And did they speak English to you, or did you
Some
know?
of them could.
Did you know German at all, or learn it, or?
Well, I could understand a little German, but not.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad, he could talk German.
Oh, could he really?
And
Well,
his the neighbors come up, and I could pick out what they was talking about.
yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So when you got to New York with this shipload of prisoners, you offloaded them and then took off again?
No, we unloaded them, and then they sent us to down into Virginia, Newport News, Virginia, and got on another ship, went back to get another bunch.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you would just be constantly going back and forth over the
It,
overseas?
at times, if they wouldn't have a load force, why they'd have us in camp. We was in England, and when they was bombing Germany around, and it was, there you could read the newspaper day and night, time, and it never got dark. But of a morning, about 8:30, 9 o'clock, you could hear the airplanes coming back in, and some of them were just a moan, and they just a pitiful moan, and they was shot up, that wings and some of them was gone, and the tails was gone, and this and that. But those old planes that come in are moaning. And, about 5-10 minutes later, you'd hear the ambulance take off.
So you were in the front line. In other words, when the wounded came back
Yeah.
to
well,
the airfield, is that where you were?
No,
No?
no. We emptied the base hospitals. You know, they'd wounded to go into the hospitals, and then we'd pick up the walking wounded and.
So was the idea you were trying to get as many American soldiers back to the U.S. as possible? Those who could travel. Is that the idea?
Oh yeah.
And you brought back British casualties and others, I suppose, too, did you, or just Americans?
No, just Americans and Germans is what all we. I guess, well, the English stayed over. Had.
They kept them in their own hospitals up north or something.
I helped build a hospital over there in England.
Yeah.
Base hospitals. We got in there, and I guess we was there 3 months or something, and helped put the hospitals together and stuff to take care of them.
Did you?
You see these wreckage and stuff of New Orleans and stuff.
Yeah.
People think it's bad, but over there you'd see in London and places where the airplanes would go through, and it looked like that. Only thing, the bodies was right in there. And
What did you have for medical equipment and drugs in those days? You had morphine was the.
oh yeah,
That's.
we had everything.
Yeah.
Can of worms.
Yeah.
You don't believe it. They had maggots
Yeah.
that they put in the wounds to clean them.
That was a wartime treatment then. They were
Oh.
using the maggots for wound treatment.
Yeah.
How did they train you to do those? What did they tell you to do or not do?
I didn't get into